Good evening and welcome to today's session on BIC streams, Within from Within, Aditi Mangaldas in conversation with Arundhati Ghosh. I hope you've all watched the films that are being discussed today, and over to you, Arundhati.
Thank you, Raghu. It's an absolute delight to be here, for me to be here today chatting with Aditi. You know, when we are celebrating or grieving, it's always that we turn to the arts. In a time like this, where each one of us are facing a whole multitude of issues, concerns, anxieties, I think one of the things that we can do is listen to the arts, listen to artists, and see what sustenance it can give us. And that's why we've always felt that artists are the hope makers of the future, no matter how dreary the times are today. And my conversation with Aditi today is therefore also for a very selfish reason, that I'm looking for ways to deal with what we are going through right now while we discuss Aditi's work. So the way we are going to have this discussion, we've sort of broken it down into three large parts. The first part is looking at Aditi's work, how she came about, and the language of her dance. The second part, the main portion, is about the incredible work that she's been doing during this lockdown with her team. And then we talk a little bit about the future. You know, many years ago, when for the first time I had looked at Aditi's work, I was stunned because perhaps for the first time I had felt that this is what happens when an artist is truly rooted into a practice that has a history. When you have roots, it basically gives you wings. And Aditi's language and dance, since then I've been following, and Aditi's been an incredible journey for us to follow your work as well. So I want to begin at the very beginning. In many interviews, you've mentioned that, you know, you don't come from a paramparic dance family. You have scientists and business people in your family, and then you chose the arts and you chose dance. So a little bit about how you came into dance and what have been some of the influences and work that has led you to the language that you've developed.
Well, first, thank you very much, Bangalore International Center, for hosting this. And thank you, Arundhati, for chatting. And it's always a pleasure. Thank you, Raghu, and thank you, Ravi, to be around and help us. I really consider myself fortunate and lucky to have been born in a very liberal family. Liberal, not of the times, just a family that was far-visioned, didn't have expectations, which are conditioned expectations of, you know, what their daughter or their son should do. And they encouraged debate. They encouraged questioning. Anything that came down through the centuries was not necessarily carved in stone. So we were encouraged to look at it and question, and well, if we, and had to have a reason for that. I think very early, thankfully, they felt that I had some artistic spark in this sort of very non-artistic family.
How old were you then, Aditi, when this first happened?
Well, the story goes that, you know, my extended Gujju family would come and visit my grandmother, my paternal grandmother. And I was about 4.5 or something. And I would jump onto this little table and try to convey my joy or whatever it was through movements. So they put me in a dance school and music and painting and what have you. And slowly all this sort of everything else fell by the side, and dance became my companion. Also, I'm really grateful to have studied under two great gurus. They are living legends, Srimati Kumudini Lakhia and Pandit Birju Maharaj Ji. And though they are very close to each other, they're, I mean, if I may share, I remember Kumiben saying, Kathak without Krishna. and Maharaj Ji saying, Kathak is Krishna.
Is Krishna, yeah.
You know, so it was wonderful to have these diverse perspectives. And I think that's why I felt, I realized very early on that there were many ways of seeing, many ways of experiencing, many ways of listening to music. One was not superior to the other. There were just many textured ways that you could enter a work, a dance piece, a music piece, a piece of literature. And therefore, drishtikon, viewpoint, you know, that they are diverse viewpoints. And I think the acceptance of them gave me the courage eventually to dance my own dance.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So very short, in a brief way, I think I have studied Kathak. I teach Kathak. My dance company, most of the dancers are, all the dancers are Kathak dancers, sorry. The musicians are Kathak musicians. 80% of my work is in the Kathak genre. So but what happens if there is an inspiration, a movement, an emotion that I want to express, and through the broader parameters of Kathak, I can't? What are the options left to me? Either I just say no, I'm going to say no to this inspiring, this something that's burning within me, and I'm going to say no, I'm not going to try it because I cannot do it within the broadest parameters of Kathak, which of course have been fueled by different Kathak practitioners, gurus, dancers over the centuries, you know. So either I say no, I can't do it, or I do it within the Kathak parameters without satisfying myself. I can't think of doing that because that would be compromising. Or I find a movement vocabulary through which I can express myself. Because after all, I am a Kathakar. I'm a narrator of stories. And stories may change and stories may evolve and stories may be such that they may not be expressed through Kathak. So what do I do? And therefore, I plant a seed of Kathak, and when I water it with Kathak sensibilities, a Kathak tree grows out. I plant a seed of Kathak, and when I water it with contemporary sensibilities, inspirations, movements, thoughts, text, music, a tree grows out that is rooted in Kathak, but it is very different from my Kathak tree.
So is that what you call the paramparic and the contemporary in your work?
Yes, I because of a lack of what to call it, I call it contemporary dance based on Kathak and my Kathak, my classical Kathak. And the contemporary work is not about, it's about absorption. So this Kathak body, I have now danced Kathak for 55 years. So this Kathak body is when it soaks in, absorbs different things, something else emerges. And that's what I call my contemporary work.
And so coming from there and coming from, practicing these two connected yet different kind of practices and embodying that, I want to come to the time when the pandemic came about, and so all of a sudden, all our lives in an instant were like totally halted. Yeah, and I've had this conversation with many artists across disciplines about how, as if there was this sudden dam in a river, because artistic practice, it's a very fluid thing. You move from one day to the other. You're in the process of making many things, and suddenly, as if there is this total lockdown in terms of a shuttering down of everything around you. You are not just an artist. You're also a leader of an arts group. You lead Drishtikon, your company. You are a very important and influential member of the arts and culture community, and you hold responsibilities. What were your first impressions? What happened to you when the lockdown was announced and this pandemic came about, and everything was like totally shut down around us? How are you taking in that?
My first response was to reach out and touch, even digitally.
Yeah, yeah.
And I mean digitally, actually.
Yeah.
Because that was the first thing that, and I thought, because as you said, there was like a timeline and it dropped.
Yeah.
Space line and it dropped. And you were suddenly chucked into this well, you know. And I felt that to touch digitally and be vulnerable was very important for me. So my first, even before the actual lockdown was announced, because we had to shut our studio at least a week before the actual lockdown was announced.
So then your studio is in Delhi, right? And
Yes.
that's where, yeah. And
Yes.
it had hit Delhi in a huge way in the first couple of days.
Yes. So we decided we would not be coming to the studio. The office was also shifted to everybody's homes. And instinctively, I started these for 2 or 3 weeks nearly, about 8-9 sessions of From My Home to Yours. They were not rehearsed sharings of dance. They were in fact spontaneous sharings of dance that I made mistakes with. I may have just made it at that point. They were not rehearsed. And it was an attempt to say, guys, we are all in this together. You know, all of us are there in this sort of well that we have been chucked into. And let me open out, let me be vulnerable, because just because I'm a dancer, I have a certain age, I have a certain experience, we are all suffering from this crazy anxiety and a crazy sense of uncertainty. And I think it was really heartening to get responses, someone from Peru, someone from the midst of Spain, you know, when it was really bad, and reaching out and saying, oh, wonderful, because these were not pieces of, we were just sharing and opening out. The other thing I did instantly is got my dancers onto Zoom and started, I thought it was very, very important to have a regime, to have a structure. And
so like a routine that
a routine,
yeah.
And also I found somehow sanity in the known, which was my Kathak Riyaz. So I guess you reach out in these times for a body memory, a mind memory, an emotional memory from something that you have done for many years.
It's a bit like reaching out to a mothership, right? Like to the source of that energy.
Your anchor.
Yeah.
And so what we did, I said, no excuses, get your ghungroos on and just do your riyaz. Let's start. And also it helped each other, because one or the other had problems. Somebody other was, you know, the anxiousness reached a point when you couldn't cope, maybe. So it was really good to have it start, and it's still happening. I mean, the riyaz is continuing. Our Zoom meetings have continued. And I think that was that was the first getting down and structuring our day.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that really helped.
That helped. And then, I mean, soon after that, we saw these 6 films first come out of the studio. And I will ask you a little later about, I find the names fascinating, the names that you've given the 6 and how they
Could I interrupt here? It was actually,
yeah.
the first film was Across Space and Time.
Yeah.
The next one was Amorphous, and then these 6.
And then these 6 came.
Yeah.
So do you want to talk about the first 2 first, maybe, and then we'll talk about the set? And I wanted to begin with asking you, why films? I mean, I understand you're a movement artist, and the movement could be, I mean, film is a movement medium as well. It's a movement of images. So was it a natural choice, or was it technically the way to reach out? Why films?
Yeah, well, if I think back now, there are things that I have now thought about.
Yeah.
But first film, honestly, I didn't even think about it. Sangeeta Rana and I worked together, and she right away started writing to people all across the world. And one of them was at the Rietberg Museum in Switzerland, and saying that, why don't you send us some of your artwork, and Aditi will respond to it. So they were taken up by the idea, and they sent us a whole lot of images, and we chose this beautiful sculpture of Krishna.
Yeah.
And that's when I said, okay, let me explore it through film. Now that film is a very linear film.
Yeah.
Right? I'm the world's worst photographer and the first filmmaker. And you know, it's like another, but suddenly you were there and you needed to learn about how your iPhone became the eye of the viewer, how you used sunlight, a little lamp, a little diya, whatever was natural, whatever was available, and using that, but it was a linear film. After that, it didn't really reflect in a way where I was. And where I was in a place where the river had changed its course. Not in the way that we usually know it, like, you know, skirting a mountain, eating up a part of a village. No, to me, time and space, the river had changed its course in a way that it was flowing from the ocean to the source, from the right to left bank and the left bank to right, from the bottom to top. So it was like I was in a amorphous sense of time, where past, present, and future seemed as if I've chucked them in a mixie, and they're all like, you know, there is no sense of what is the present, past, or future.
What is before and what is after.
What is after. And similarly with space. Inside me inside the room inside the apartment inside the complex, the ocean outside, the tree outside, but us in that not being able to reach out and yet being able to reach out. So I was really fortunate that Oddbird Theatre from Delhi approached me and said, would you make a film? And that's the film I feel where really what I was feeling about the amorphous nature of time is what I started working with. And there was a piece called Zero Moment from an older work of mine called from Timeless, which is in fact about, can you hold time past and time future in time present? And it seemed the right place to take off from. So when I danced it in my confines of my home, I danced it with the back to the camera.
Yeah.
We let detailing appear in the film as if these tentacles of time are lost. They
It was
themselves...
also a very bare space, right? It's a very bare, angular kind of space within which you move around, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And also when Yashas did a fabulous job of editing it, because I said, right now, to me, time is wrapping. It's like like an octopus and tentacles. That's all around, right, left, top, bottom, upside down. And so we worked on shots, and we worked on the edit. It becomes slow, it becomes fast. And I think that is when I started, I think, oh, it's really wonderful how film gives you the possibility of many things, that it opened different doors creatively.
Okay, you move to the next 6 films, which is with your team, because these are the 6 films that are like a set. And I want to ask you about the process of making these 6, because it's a collaboration between you, the dancers who work with you, the filmmakers, and there's a whole process going on here with some new work, some of the recordings of your old work.
Yeah.
And here I would like to mention the names of the films in this order. It's Entwined, Meltdown, Enframed, Wrapped, Unravel, Impassioned. When I was reading it, Aditi, it was almost as if this is more or less the structure of my emotions during the first month of the lockdown. And I don't know if that was what you were trying to get at, but it was quite uncanny that's the connection it had with me.
First there was anxiety, and it's always been, it's always round the corner. A kind of acceptance of where you are, understanding to adapt to that current reality, to reimagine your work, your art, transform, and then dance. So if I can say accept, adapt, reimagine, transform, and dance. These were emotions that were tumbling in, and Within is a work that we premiered in 2013, which is about a look at the brutality and humanity within us. Here it becomes more about looking at the expansion and the constriction within us. So are we able to find that expansion even though we are in confined spaces right now? So this constant movement of this constriction and expansion of the mind, of the heart, of the body, and what happened first is, you'd have to, I looked at within several times, let it be absorbed into my current reality, and made little stories which were to do with entwined and meltdown and enframed and little small narratives, very small storylines. And then with doing Riyaz, some kind of movement, something would emerge which I would feel works really well. And then we would be on Zoom 2 to 3 hours a day with
all the other dancers at this point.
With all the other dancers, the musicians.
And Aditi, were the filmmakers part of this process of listening in, or did they come later?
No, the editor.
The editor, yeah.
Yeah, editor came much later. He, Kuldeep Gaur, and he's from Delhi. And we worked, once we shot the film, once I had a storyline. And what we did is we made a storyline. We went with each dancer digitally in their homes.
Right.
Where are you allowed? Which part can you, what window can you open?
Yeah.
When is there sunlight? Is there a tree outside your house?
Oh, what is behind you, you know, and what is on the side? It's very interesting.
What is on the side? Is there, is there, can you watch the sunset? Can you watch the sunrise? And all these discussions. Okay, what color of the wall is it? What light do you have if there is no possibility of sunlight? And movement, and we were giving I was recording movement and sending it to them. They were recording it and sending it back. And then while the narrative was happening and the movement from our home was happening, things were popping out from the actual within images, you know, and which music to use, because it's all music is original, the text is original, original in the sense which was used in the... And then once we had this whole box full of things, I would sort of, like I said, let me try how I work choreographically. So let me choreograph this little bit of music, this text, the movements, the 40 little films that my dancers have sent. Let me choreograph it. And that's the only skill I have. I mean, I've never held a camera and filmed anything right ever in my life.
So you were choreographing the images?
The film.
Yeah.
And also shooting myself, because I was, and my daughter-in-law was helping me, my mother was helping me shoot. Anyway, so this then I would send to the editor with narratives, with timelines, with also 2 hours of discussion for a 1-minute film of what is it that I was looking at. And then he would come back with lots of suggestions. Of course, that's his medium, wonderful suggestions, and we would work at it. And that's how somehow, as you say, slowly, it took a while.
Yeah. You know, I was looking at these films and wondering, so, you know, many of the reviews of your work mention this particular thing, which is that when you look at Aditi's work, it's almost a study in 2 binaries, which is stillness and a whirling energy. And when one looks at these films, all the 6 films actually, and the other 2 as well, one has exactly that same sense. There are moments of absolute stillness within the films, and there are moments where you can almost sense the energy whirling through the film. Was that something that you brought in, or did that just happen because that's part of your language and part of your style?
To an extent, it's part of our language. I think it's part of the language of dance. I think, I wouldn't say Kathak. You know, to have, you can say a lot by being completely still. There is so much moving in this stillness. And one is able also to find a point of stillness, complete stillness in extreme movement. So that is a part of dance. How dance explores the movement of the mind, the movement of the heart, and the movement of the body. And I think when these intertwine and the senses come together, it is possible to hold something in extreme movement, and it is possible to move something in complete stillness. So I think it's part of the language of dance.
Of dance itself,
But what was in my mind was about this constriction and expansion.
Right.
About, you sent me a question which really triggered a thought process, that why have you used the old work?
Yeah, the recorded material, and then you recorded new live material as well. Yeah.
And that was a really, really interesting question, because it last 2 days that since you sent it, I have always felt not ready to dance right now.
Yeah.
We rehearse very often, but to share dance, I feel I need to be totally immersed and simultaneously completely in a sense of expansion. So which I can't find right now. And as I said, anxiety, uncertainty, and uncertainty is always with us all our lives. We seem to think it is not.
Yeah, true.
But it's come into focus, and I don't feel it's right for me to dance, cut-paste dance that was 5 months ago right now into this way.
The person is also different, right? The Aditi today is not the same Aditi.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, before the lockdown, I was in full rehearsal mode, because we were going to Turkey, we were going to America, we were going to Canada. And in 1 second, 1 day that this happened, I knew I would not be dancing from my home. That's because I just don't find that dance within me.
Yeah.
Okay. And that old film is a memory that I'm carrying with me.
Right.
But
it is a memory. It is not the real now. It is a memory.
Not the now.
Yeah.
And so if I want to make work that I feel honestly reflects who I am right now, as a dancer and as a choreographer, there are all these memories, and suddenly there's a compartment in my heart, mind, and my body, because the memory has stopped at one point. Like you said, there's a dam. And there are these new experiences.
Right.
And for me, I have to put those into a mix,
Yeah. True. And make
only then am I honest.
Yeah. I was actually thinking that, again, something that many people have said about your work. And I specifically remember Shanta Gokhale had written a very, very interesting review about your work, where she said that to watch Aditi is to actually watch a body and mind that is utterly free. And I really liked her using this word, utterly free. And I was thinking, as I was watching the films and your work during this time, that freedom has been one of our biggest losses in this. And so someone like you, whose work has been so much about, and there are other people, and on your website also one finds that the traveler, the quest, the journeys. So there's so much movement and freedom, even in the language that you use in talking about dance and your work. And certainly freedom has been one of the biggest casualties of the now, of the current condition. How does that impact you as an artist? Because it's so much, it's like I feel it's the core, at the very core of you, it's that. So how do you deal with that when that is at a loss?
Well, Shantaji has been really very generous. I think utterly free is something that we all aspire to be, and sometimes I ask myself, I dance because that takes me there.
Yeah.
The moment of that dance helps me be in that place which is utterly free. So at one level, I'm dancing right now. I'm not sharing. I'm dancing, and I'm finding the freedom and the expansion because of that. It is touching me. The dance is bringing me closest to my humanity, to my life, and filling you with gratitude, because it's helping, I think, artists all over the world. To have this sense of soaring when you are confined in like a 20 feet by 10 feet room or whatever, you know. And how can the present not, how can you not, I've been saying this all my life, that, you know, you have to breathe the air of today.
Yeah.
I mean, how can you be divorced from this reality?
Yeah, true.
How can it not affect how I dance, what I dance, how I share, what work eventually I will make? I don't feel equipped to make anything right now in this current. I've made a small little piece with my dancers, with them dancing, but it's, I don't want to be impatient at all. Luckily, I'm privileged that I can be where I am.
And you know, you use this word soaring, and I was just thinking that the first time that this video came out of Italy, where an artist walked onto the balcony and started singing or playing an instrument, soaring was the word that you felt, you know, as if your spirits rose up out of this.
I remember I cried.
Yeah.
You know, and it was before we thought it was going to impact us.
Exactly.
It
was just empathy with the other. We didn't know it would happen.
It was empathy, and it was saying, you know, how wonderful. I mean, it felt as if the voice filled the entire street.
Exactly.
And you know,
I'm getting goosebumps talking about it, you know.
Exactly. And that's what I think, that is what, that to a very small extent is what I felt when I did these from my home to your sharing. Because it was not about being perfect or good or bad. It was just about being vulnerable and being grateful and saying, hey, we are all in it together. So let's reach out and let's help each other.
Yeah. You know, I want to move from here to straight to a very practical aspect of our lives in the arts. And one of the things, I want to begin with this, that one of the things that I noticed while I was watching the films is we do fundraising for the arts, right? So when we go to raise money, we are often told that, oh, but you know, in India, only very well-to-do people from very well-to-do families go into the arts, and why should they need support, etc. One of the things the films did for me, and I think it's beautiful, is it put into perspective what modest backgrounds some of our artists come from. You know, when you look at their home, it is not super affluent homes. It is not rich people's homes. It's modest, hardworking homes. That's the image that you get. And I was so delighted, Aditi, when I heard that your company has taken a policy that no more free content, because as somebody who's a facilitator in the arts, it irks me to no end to see that how everything of the artist is wanted as free, as if artists don't, you know, need sustenance.
Love and fresh air.
So here I will ask you a little bit about the larger ecology of the arts, and you know, you've been such an important member of this fraternity, the artist fraternity. What do you think are some of the key concerns that, say, whether it's the government or even small organizations like ours, IFA, should look at? What are the key concerns and what could we do? Are there a few suggestions that you have?
Before I answer that, if I may just go back to this from within.
Yeah.
These films. As you know, we were approaching different organizations, and we approached Raw Mango with this idea within from within, as a set of films, and whether they would collaborate and basically fund, give us a small funding to make the film, because you know, with the editor and things like that. And they were, I must say that they were very generous and came up on board to collaborate. And it was their idea to say that, Aditi, why don't we put these films forward as a fundraiser?
Right, correct. Yeah.
So, and it was when Salman and Sanjay said this to me, I said, yes. You know, I've been making these little videos for various organizations who are collecting funds. Like, please give funds, you know, we appeal to you. I said, that's a great idea, Salman and Sanjay, that we are offering you an artistic experience through the hard work of my entire team. And for that, please give us something which is not going to us, but going to, then we approached Teamwork Arts, who also were very, very happy about the collaboration, and they put up a separate link. So the funds go then to Teamwork Arts, and then they're distributed amongst the really needy artists, who there are thousands of.
Yes.
And so coming to this, if you look at what is happening in our country today, it's individual efforts by individual artists at fundraising.
Yeah.
You know, dancers, musicians, even theater people, technicians, light designers, stage managers are making small little initiatives to raise funds.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think it's really saddening and shocking that I completely understand that in the first 2 months, priorities were very different. There was a front line that we needed to, address about the actual situation, the hospitals and the doctors and all the helpers and in that. And yes, but it's been 4 months, you know. Couldn't the government at least release the grant that they were supposed to release?
So that they actually owe people.
That they owe the artists or the institution. I mean, and this is for the organized artists, you know, who have applied, who are registered, who have some kind of funding options. You don't need to think about this. You need to be generous. You, well, maybe 20% or 10% or whatever it is, maybe bad releases of the grant, maybe, but overall, the structure is, you know what's happening in this country.
Yeah.
Right? So at least that should have been the first thing that should have happened. That what you owe the artists, at least, you know, we have survived. Many institutions, many artists who are registered have survived without the grant for 2.5 years.
Yeah.
Right. But there was things coming in, so we were getting along. The second thing is that other institutions which send tours abroad, like the ICCR or the Sangeet Natak Academy, which have many festivals, the government should have released the grants already to these institutions.
So that they can function properly and efficiently.
They can, nobody is going on a tour right now.
Yeah.
Nobody is doing a live festival right now. If those, I believe that they don't have the grants that have not been released. And because of that, these institutions could have then, in a way, reached out to the unorganized individual artist sectors, because they too have a huge database of artists who are not maybe getting a grant from the government of India, or maybe not empaneled with ICCR, or ICCR should have at least the empaneled artists somehow the funds meant for tours abroad, find out who are the really deserving. I mean, in terms of
in need.
the money.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So things like, you know, I'm not a strategist, Arundhati. I am the worst administrator in the world. And honestly, I have these crazy ideas, and I can imagine that artists may not be the best people be able to, you know, there are many, many, many things that you have to look at in a country, especially in a country like India, where funds are not sort of, and yet I lament that, you know, you keep on talking about the uniqueness of our culture and our arts. And the people who have made this whole ambience and this whole land, the fact of the uniqueness is that these very people you are ignoring. I mean, right now you don't think of policy and ideas, and you just go ahead and do something about it.
Yeah, and it's you're absolutely right. You know, for the last 4 months, I've been going back to Ministry of Culture and all the different Sangeet Natak Academy, Lalit Kala, the websites, just to see if there has been some announcement, you know, some sort of release of support or relief, at least to the needy artists, you know, at least to the artists for whom the fact that their regular income, the little that artists make anyway, has totally shut down at least some response to them. But yeah, like you're saying, you know, all the initiatives like you've done, your film, which worked as fundraisers, there's DM Krishna has been raising money, Shubha Muddal, Anish has been raising money. Yes. There've been various artists, I'm only naming a few. There's Artists for Artists in Bombay. That what was also very hurtful is artists were one of the first people, theatre makers, musicians, dancers, who came out onto the field to support other communities, you know, to support other people who were affected by COVID, whether they were migrant workers or they were sex workers, trans people. But there was nothing for the artists. And it always happens, you know, somebody will come to you saying, do a fundraiser for my little NGO, and you'll do it. You'll dance for free because you believe in the cause. But it somehow doesn't come back to our sector in any way. And that's sad. Sometimes I think that maybe we've been Atmanirbhar throughout, right? The artists in this country have been independent and doing our own thing.
Independent, and there's been this, you know, how do you survive in any case before the pandemic?
Yeah.
There were, you know, very few who were privileged. Yeah. Everybody it was like hand to mouth. You know, and now it's a really bad situation. And though, I mean, there are Sangeet Natak Academy is doing, you know, the workshops, ICCR, they've taken a film of mine and they're going to be, they are reimbursing me for it. As you said, you know, we had decided that there's no more free content. Yeah. That's happening, but I think it should be happening much more.
Yeah, true. Let us move to some hopeful stuff from here, the future. You were working on 2 incredible things that I read, and I want to know how. So one is your own piece, which is called Forbidden, and I'm already excited to know what it is about. The name itself is like, so what's Aditi going to do with this? So tell us a little bit about this project and the other work, which is with your team, which you've called Lace, and a little bit about what the plans were and how do you now see the plans sort of unraveling over the next year or so?
Well, Forbidden was to be premiered this November at the Jamshed Bhabha Theatre at the NCPA. And it had a wonderful team of collaborators. Farooq Chaudhary, who is the dramaturge, Murad Deis, the mentor. I've been wanting to work with Michael Hulls, who's an amazing light designer, for years. And finally, we were doing this together. Kimi Nakano she's Japanese, and she was doing the costumes. And Nikki Wells, beautiful music, you know, music composer. So it was really exciting because we were working with collaborators from all over the world and me from here. And what the piece was about, why is the world scared of female sexual fantasy? You know, why is it that the world of sexual fantasy for women is forbidden? You know,
it's so fearful, you know, and sometimes people are so afraid of it.
Afraid of it, exactly. And why? And when women do own their own desire, you slot them into a goddess or a so-called fallen woman or somebody with loose morals. And from time immemorial, you see, you read our books, our epics, it sort of gets reinforced and reinforced, and also across the world. You know how the control of female sexuality, at some point, you feel you're going to control the flight of the woman.
Yeah.
You know? And
so scared that she's going to run away.
And as if powers are going to be unleashed.
And powers that you can't control.
That society
can't control.
Can't control.
True.
So there's always been curbs about the sexual desire and fantasy of women. So the piece was is about that. And we are hoping to premiere it.
Is it already done, or are you in the process of making
it? Well, it was, the skeleton is done.
Okay.
We were supposed to be rehearsing it. May, I was going to be in India. April, May was my time to do it here in India. And then end of May and June was going to be in Germany and London. We are hoping to now premiere it at the NCPA next year. That's November 2021.
Oh wow! So it's pushed back one whole year.
One full year. Yeah. I want to take my time and.
Of course. Yeah. And what about the piece with your team, Lace? That
has a real irony to it, because that work was, we were, the Ambani Center in Bombay, the fabulous center that is coming up, they had approached us, and this was the piece that we were wanting to do when they had opened, and in 2021 actually. And strangely, this piece was about how in this extremely technologically connected world, we as human beings.
So Aditi, you have unleashed this monster, right?
I just can't, and we had worked on it to an extent. We had also built small little dance pieces, and then put it aside, because, in India, the reality is that you keep on, new productions happen, but simultaneously you're constantly performing your
the older pieces,
current ones in the season. Anyway, so I'm just thinking back, and we have had meetings with Anuj Talukdar and Amrita during the lockdown, and we've talked about this piece, and I'm saying, oh my God, it's about how human relations are being cut in this whole technological connectivity. And, it's turned upside down, because had it not been for this technological connectivity, I fear what our lives would be.
In our own little prisons called homes. I mean, that's what we would be, right?
Yes. Yeah. And so this work is going to be really turned upside down, right, left, upper, niche, I don't know.
So you'll have to rethink this whole thing with your new experience of this time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Actually, we have a lot of questions. So maybe we'll go to that. I have a few more questions, but I'll do them later if we have time.
Okay.
There are lots of interesting questions that have come from the audience. So I'll take them one by one. And some of them are actually my questions as well. So the first one is about, how so many artists have come online and are showcasing their work on social media platforms, dancers, artists, students of all levels of Kathak. Why do you think there was a need or an urgency to go digital, even by those who probably wouldn't have performed on stage otherwise? By this, I mean, no matter what situation we are in, shouldn't there be a standard of performance? I guess this is about the quality of performance. Shouldn't we maintain a level of sophistication no matter which platform we are performing on? So there have been, issues about democratizing the arts at one place, because that's what social media and so many of us have talked about TikTok kind of, platforms as well. But at the same time, the question is, what happens to quality? What happens to presentation? What happens to the quality of content that we are presenting?
See, Arundhati, I feel right now for me, as I said, I don't find the expansion and immersion in my dance as I would need to share. I also do feel that Kathak has had a very interesting journey from the temples to the courts. Then in the British period, in smaller principalities, it also got disrepute, so-called in kotas, and then on the proscenium stage, and now in our bedrooms or living rooms. And for me, it doesn't work to cut paste what was
into this new situation.
In this new, so I was dancing something, as I said, I was completely rehearsed because I was traveling abroad, and that piece I could have easily danced here live, and it doesn't work for me. Okay, it doesn't work for the place where I am today. At the same time, I don't grudge anyone who's performing right now in whichever scenario, whichever, or a grudge, or want to make judgment. Actually, it's a grudge is the wrong word. Sorry, to judge anyone who's reaching out through the digital platform. Many of them, as you say, may not have got a platform in the world that we were in 4 months ago. Maybe there were some who could not get a platform because of various reasons and now have a platform. I think if all of us are in this, as you said, this well. I don't want to judge any content that is put out, because I think the need is for each of them to connect, to reach out. Sometimes I see that there is one person watching, when that live thing is happening, there's a little eye and there's one. It's okay. I have always felt that it's a river that is constantly flowing, and it is imbibing from the atmosphere, from the environment, from which region, which forest, which mountain it is flowing through, right? And what is profound and substantial and has meaning and has got some kind of, is truthful actually, will flow and reach. And the rest will maybe subside. I'm not judging. I'm sorry. I know there's a lot of questions and lot of debate, and I understand how desperately one wants to be out there and in the best of your you think.
Yeah, true, true. The next question is also very interesting. It's about, you know, how you've had the opportunity, like you said, to train under two great Kathak maestros, Kumudini Lakya and Pandit Birju Maharaj. And the question is, where do young dancers go today for inspiration?
Today in this this scenario?
I think it's a question of are there amazing teachers like that?
You know, look, for me, my two great gurus, my immediate family, are who I consider my gurus. But I do feel that my greatest guru has been life itself. So inspirations come from everywhere. A bit of poetry, a leaf falling, looking at the sky, which suddenly in Bombay these days are just incredible.
Yeah.
You know? And there are so many gurus. There are so many wonderful practitioners of dance. There are so many museums. There's so much music. I mean, for inspiration, I don't think there is a lack of it, of being open to it. What could be a problem is that if you are wearing blinkers. Like my Kumiman used to always say, my guru, that, you know, we are learning Kathak, ekdam Kathak training, but don't wear blinkers. Be open to what life has to give you.
Yeah. You know, the next question actually connects to that.
Okay.
It says that, do you think that Kathak as a language is much more adaptable to interpret abstract philosophical concepts? Because the person feels that your work has been influenced a lot by your philosophical outlook. So do you think that Kathak as a practice has the language and vocabulary for you to do it? Or do you need to look outside of the Kathak vocabulary to interpret and present them?
As I said, you know, most of my work does fall within the Kathak vocabulary. But as I said, I needed, I mean, for example, I wanted to, this is many years ago. This was in fact the first instinct when I wanted to dance claustrophobia. It was 1986, if I'm not mistaken. And nothing of what I understood and my training and my imagination from within the Kathak repertoire convinced me, helped me make a work that was convincing to me and that was honest about claustrophobia. And therefore, it compelled me to plant this seed and water it with various different sensibilities. We've talked about this. So obviously, there was something that I needed to say. And look, I think imagination is far greater, you know, like Einstein said, than knowledge. And our human brain, after all, takes precedence over the Kathak brain.
Yeah, true.
You know?
So it's like
human being first, and then a dancer, and then a Kathak dancer.
Yeah. And you know, it's for any language, right? Like many of us are multilingual, but there will be certain things which we prefer to say it in a particular language and not the other. So your language of, say, love and intimacy may be very different from your language of professional connections or your language for something else.
It's, you find within yourselves the best way to open your heart and narrate your story. And you, as an artist, I feel compelled to do it in the best way I can. And for that, I feel compelled to find means, movement, vocabularies, inspirations, poetry. Hello?
No, that's another call, I think.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. It was God, I got a shock because suddenly you went off.
No,
it was on
no problem.
on silent, but it rang. I think anyway,
Yeah. So, you know, there's lots of questions about the digital and obviously, I mean, the digital and dance and
where we
art
are
and
right
digital.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this question is that, you know, when you actually perform in front of people in a physical space, immediately after your performance, there may be opportunities for people to narrate their experience of what they emotionally experienced in that immediate presence. How do you think these digital performances have been received by the audience? Do you think that as an artist, an element of affect is lost in translation when performed on a digital platform? So you haven't like quite performed like, but you have seen others.
I haven't, to be honest, I haven't performed
but you
live.
have seen others, right? So do you think?
I have not performed live on a digital platform. Our arts are a simultaneous exploration between the viewer and the viewed.
Right. Yeah.
That's not happening right now. That's the reality. I mean, there's no point harping about it because that's where we are. And that's why film, I found, was a way where I could use the camera as the roving eye. In the sense, when you watch a performance, you sometimes focus, you sometimes pull back, you sometimes just listen to the music and your eyes are sort of, you know, taking in the entire thing. Sometimes you focus right onto the footwork or the music. Film allows me to do that. I have not danced live, and there are when people come backstage and talk to you and share their experience of that particular piece isn't happening right now.
Yeah.
What is happening right now is that I have seen, when you see people performing digitally, there are expressions. People have found expressions of support by sending in little hearts or little questions or wah or that is the reality right now.
Yeah, but and right now it is all too mechanical maybe, but who knows, we might just get used to that.
I don't know. And look, the arts, the humanity has passed through many major disasters in the past.
Yeah.
I mean, the Bengal famine, the Second World War, the plague. So we may not have lived through that. And so I do feel that the arts will cross this bridge. But they can't be unchanged.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen.
And you know, when you were talking about even the history of Kathak, moving from public spaces of storytelling, temples, and then to courts, and then to kothas, and wherever it has gone, it has become anew, as they say.
Exactly. It has reimagined. You know, amazing practitioners and dancers and gurus must have been who reimagined their work, because the intention is a very integral part of our work.
Yeah, true.
And dance and intention can change a lot of things.
Wow. Yeah. You know, it's beautiful you say that, because I was thinking of space and people and everything, but I think at the core of it is the intention. Is the intention storytelling? Is it devotion? Is it to please the king?
Exactly.
Is it to please, who's watching you, your patrons?
Absolutely.
What is it? Yeah.
What is that intention? And intention has changed from the temple to the court to the proscenium. And with every production or every performance or every little bit of work or every thumri you dance, there is an intention into that. That is really, and be honest with that intention. Is very important, because then truth comes out.
Yeah. You know, there's another question, and this is from a dancer. I think, because the way it's framed, with this new normal, and if digital media being the new stage is going to stay for a while, what, according to your experience of these months, are the new skills which we dancers should learn so that we are updated with the medium? Because dancing for a camera and dancing for a live audience is totally different.
I think, as I said before, you just have to adapt to where we are right now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting how very, very interesting things can happen.
Mm-hmm.
Challenge at times. I can't remember who said it, but I was listening to a webinar,
Mm-hmm.
and that challenging times sometimes bring about amazing work.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, and these are extremely challenging times. So there is something that is going to emerge. Don't
Mm-hmm.
give up.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there are no shortcuts.
Mm-hmm.
They were not 4 months before, they are not now, they will not be in the future. So this complete sense of what we call sadhana and riyaz, you know, dedicated practice and sadhana is a must for whatever you do, even if it is a 1 minute little movie that you're making, or 1 minute, 5 minute live dance you are doing. Look at it in a textured way, I feel. You know, as like we are on stage, I like to look at my work in a textured fashion. Of, is the intention of the work, is it being addressed by my costume, by my poetry, by the music, by the lights, by the stage? It doesn't have to be fancy. You can have one light. And I think the same way, skills to learn are, of course, the digital media is a skill that we are all learning. I think just be open to different ways of seeing.
Yeah.
And that is a skill, and new things come up.
You know, actually, I was, this question was already asked. Otherwise, I would have asked you a question about what would your advice to younger dancers today going to be? But I guess you have mentioned that in this. I do have a question, two other questions. I mean, because we've sort of dealt with most of the questions that came about. Oh, there is one, yeah. These are more comments. There was one question about Miss Jaikar being, your aunt Miss Jaikar being a great influence to many people. And has that particularly shaped or molded you and influenced you in any way?
Yeah, she was my maternal grandmother's sister. And as I said, I came from a very liberal family, and I'm very, very close to my immediate family. I think my grandmother and Pupul Masi, as I used to call her, were very close to the philosopher J. Krishnamurti.
Yeah.
As growing up as a young girl, when they took me to many of his talks, often he would be living at their homes, or my cousins, my uncle's house, and I would be there actually living myself too. And the philosophy of J. Krishnamurti, somehow, I think a lot of my work has been inspired and something or the other from the philosophy of J. Krishnamurti. So yes, I think Pupul Masi was, and I was really lucky that when I was in Delhi, I lived with her for nearly 5 or 6 years. This was in the early 80s. And I loved talking about things with her mostly, because she had a fabulous imagination of how. I remember a piece in Footprints on Water, which where I was dancing Winter. And I was going.
When was this, Aditi? When was
Footprints on Water was premiered in 1996.
So one of your early works.
Yeah. 96. And Shubha did the music. Shubha Mudgal had done the music. And and I feel, and Winter, we were, of course, I was pouring through all the Ritu Samar by Kalidasa and many other, things from influences from everywhere. And she said a very simple thing. She said, do you want to look at winter as a time when you take a pause in your life?
Mm-hmm.
That was all. And then on later discussions, it became like a comma in one's life, not a full stop. And I danced the piece with my back to the audience. So removed the identity. And Shubha made the most amazing music in Jog, where it was like a river that slowly goes under, becomes subterranean.
Ah, wonderful.
So you can get,
it's like a hibernating kind of thing, like a hibernating.
Yes, hibernating. Exactly. That you're hibernating, you are collecting your energies, you are, and that one, this is just an example. I think I love to talk and discuss with a whole lot of people when I'm making new work. They may be my parts of my family, or dancers, or musicians, or
only arts, only people from the arts, Aditi, or do you, because you said, you have scientists in your family as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's some mad mathematicians in my family, and their complete craziness, and their wonderful, brilliant minds. So talking to people who have not anything to do with the arts, something comes up. And I collect it in that, I call it my Ziploc bag. And it's like, on little pieces of tissue paper and boarding cards. And well, now it's not going to be whatever it is. And I collect these. And so I think that's very important. So Pupul Masi, of course, was a great influence, but also being open to life and just talking to people, reading books, going to museums, exposing yourself to different types of music, I think helps.
So this will be my last question to you, Aditi, and this is something as being part of IFA, being in the art sector for the past 20 years, I have often thought about, chatted with people about, have been conflicted about. What do you think, and especially given today's context, I mean socially, politically, economically, in every possible way, the place that we find ourselves today, what is the role of the artist in society that you think? What is your take on who is the artist in society?
Isn't it a mirror?
I mean, your take.
To me, I think
there's that beautiful Krishnamurti quote you have in one of your films, I think, right?
Where Krishnaji said that you have to find the right mirror to reflect accurately who you are.
Wow. And so you think the artist is that mirror?
Yeah, and only in understanding that is there freedom from that. So I think artists in different ways, artists dance, artists perform, artists are artists for different reasons. But eventually they mirror society. They mirror our life. They are a connection between the real and the imaginary. Between the real.
They are bridges, they help us to get off the reality and go into other places.
They resonate. They are able to. I mean, where they can take you to a space where it can resonate beyond time and beyond space.
Right.
And I would say that that's what an artist's role is. And some artists are actively activists.
Yeah.
But some people are I feel that you cannot be affected with what is happening around you.
Yeah.
I mean, really, for me, I don't like to use the word true art, but art is something that absorbs from your current reality.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it cannot be divorced from something.
From where you're standing,
From where you are standing. And I keep on saying, art has to breathe the air of today.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Aditi. I mean, just to leave us with that line saying, art has to breathe the air of today. And thank you, because it resonates with so much that we do, we see, we interact with, we get influenced by and respond to around us. And thank you for spending this evening with us and sharing your
so much. And thank you everybody for being here and listening to us. Thank you, Arundhati, and thank you
so much.
Bangalore International Center for having me.